Hey, hello, I'm Kråkan, also known as Scarecrow, and welcome to Closet Movie Rambles, where I talk about old movies that I found in my closet while cleaning. This week's movie is Righteous Kill. It's a thriller from 2008. It's about 1 hour and 36 minutes long, starring Robert De Niro and Al Pacino. And the movie starts with these two detectives named Rooster, played by Al Pacino, and David, played by Robert De Niro, and they're target practicing and lifting weights. And Rooster's also playing chess. And then cutting to David on this kind of interrogation kind of tape where he talks about the narration of a child molester that basically got freed. And then cutting to Rooster actually seeing him planting evidence in a plastic bag to put on Randall to basically frame him for what he's done, and that goes successfully. And then there's a new case. There's a bad guy at a club that I kind of want to nail. He's played by 50 Cent, I think, and the character is called Spider. So they kind of get in an argument, and David goes to take a piss. And in the bathroom, a girl enters. She promised him that she won't look because this is a boys' or men's room. And she puts on a line of cocaine and she kind of sniffs it in, and David says, where did you get that? And she's like, she got it from Spider. And then cutting to a lady walking home in the middle of the night, getting into her apartment and getting attacked by someone. And cutting to the next day, that was actually David attacking her, because this lady, she also works for the police as a detective, I think. She's called Karen, and they have this kind of relationship where she gets turned on by violence. So that's their benefit, some weird kind of relationship that he has. And then there's a new case. There's this character called a skater pimp, and he basically picks up hookers and he makes it put them to work. And David is there, and he kind of kills him off, basically. And the next day, David and Rooster and Karen is there investigating it. So basically it is like he does these murders to get away with bad guys. And then they kind of pretend that the case didn't happen. So David is actually guilty of killing these bad people, but he's trying to hide it, basically. And then they look for clues, and they found a poem which rhymes, which David put there, of course. And then they go to see this kind of guy, and the person in charge of this bar. And there's a girl, and they ask about the skater pimp, and she says, "What about him?" "Well, he's dead." And she kind of laughs about it because he was such a bad guy. And then they cut to another. They basically go to their boss, and they get yelled at a bit, and they are supposed to write down their thoughts and everything into two booklets, because they're not mentally stable, these two characters, Rooster and David. So they get this little booklet notepad to write down what they think, their thoughts, because they're gonna see a psychologist later. And then cutting to the next case. So they really want to get to this 50 Cent character called Spider. So they use the girl from the bathroom that David met in the bathroom earlier to kind of make her buy drugs from Spider. But she goes in alone, and David and Rooster and some other guys check on the surveillance from outside, and something goes south because Spider calls the bluff. There was supposed to be like 150 grams of cocaine or something, and it's kind of ridiculous that one girl needs that much. So Spider calls the bluff, and basically David and Rooster goes in, and then they intimidate Spider, and there is a guy sneaking up on him from behind with a gun, and there's a gunfight, and they kill this kind of bodyguard of Spider's, and they pin Spider down and kick him. and the girl also gets shot in the process, but she survives. And then cutting to David and Rooster getting yelled out by their boss. Basically, they need to talk to some lawyers, and they need to basically talk more to this psychiatrist, and yet again being told they have to write down their stuff, what they're thinking and everything. And then cutting to David fucking Karen again, and then cutting to David on a baseball match between like the detectives and guys at the police station, and he kind of tackles a guy just to get to home base basically, and there's an argument. And then there's some more cases. Rooster talks to Karen about the takedown of Spider, and he realized that she gets off on the violence, so he kind of exaggerated the story. And then after telling it, he basically tells her that she's a bad girl. And then cutting to Randall's trial, and I think this is a recap of everything. And he gets away with the murder, and then David and Rooster is there watching. And then even later cutting to David actually killing off Randall in cold blood. And then even later, Rooster and David investigates the murder of Randall. And there is this, and then the group kind of, they found a poem and stuff there too. And then cutting to the group discussing, there's this other guy, I don't know what he's called, and this other guy named Perez, and David and Rooster is there too, and Karen. And they kind of discuss like who they might think the killer is. And then David realized, he's kind of thinking this in his head, like, if I can get away with this, I can get away with anything basically. So I can do this forever and no one would ever notice it. And then even later Karen talks to Rooster about, she might think there is a connection. She might have a connection or a lead up on who it might be. And Rooster kind of dismisses this just like that. And then David and Rooster goes to a bar, and they kind of talk about everything. And then cut into the group realizing that the killer might be a cop. And David kind of get upset about this because there is no evidence pointing to a cop, but they think like the routines, placing the gun and how things were done is pointing to a cop, and he gets angry by that. And then cutting to Karen and David after they're have had sex, and they kind of talk about the killing, the murder, and Karen also thinks that it might be a cop, and that upsets David, and then he leaves. And then cutting to a psychiatrist asking David and Randall questions separately. Randall being positive and David being negative about the answers. And then cutting to the group exercising and working. And David suggests that the killer might not be a cop but an ex-cop. And then the group kind of taunts David for basically fucking Karen. And then he gets angry and leaves. And then cutting to to Rooster, David and Karen going through an FBI report. And David sees his own handwriting in it. So he kind of goes for Karen, and Rooster thinks that he's hitting on Karen again. So he basically tells his partner to leave. Okay, leave me out of this. Leave me out of your sexual adventures. And basically that's, David gets away with it. And the other team goes for a stakeout for this ex-employee, basically, this ex-cop. And then David goes to Karen's house and he goes through her laptop looking for files. And then the ex-cop shows up at Perez and his partner's car, and he basically has a gun in his hand, but he has this he has an alibi. Basically, he has receipts and he has all these paper and documents. He wasn't even there when the murder happened. He was someplace else doing something else. So the ex-cop kind of gets cleaned out. He's not involved. And then cutting to David killing a pastor in one of these confession booths. And later David and Rooster investigate the case. And then even later, David talked to his boss, or his boss talks to him about there's a lot of connection between you and this pastor. In the past, you used to be like in this kind of religious group, not group, but I don't know what you call it, but like if you live in a certain area, like your local church. He was into the local church. Yeah, that's what I meant to say. So he has some connections to this pastor back in the day, but he says he doesn't have any feelings, or he didn't know about this stuff, so he gets out on it. And then even Rooster defends David by saying, like, to his boss, like, well, David is just a good guy, you know, he cares about people. And then Rooster talks to Karen because they are kind of having an affair, that she might, can you dig something up on David? Something might not be right about this. This is strange. And then Rooster calls a meeting, and David is not there. And then Rooster admits that he and David planted a gun on Randall to get him framed for the molesting of children, basically. And then cutting to David on a subway reflecting on things. And then cutting to Rooster and David arguing alone. And David argues about the group turning against him. And then later Karen gives Perez some inside information. And then Rooster and David argue over a dinner at a dining place about Perez. And in the background there is this Russian gangster that boasts about how many people he had killed. And Rooster kind of tells David to let it go. This is not the time nor the place. And then later David actually kills off that Russian gangster too. So this is the pattern. They run up against the bad guy, and then basically David kills him. And then David asks Karen if he can trust her, because he wants some inside information from Perez. But the Russian gangster kind of survives the shootout, and he's in the hospital. He got shot like 6 times or something, but he survived it. And then Spider calls David over to go and discuss at his club. And it's actually a setup from Perez and his partner to frame David, because they've kind of been suspicious about his activities from the start. And then David goes to hurt Karen, like a real lot. He hurts her really bad. And then Karen goes to see David's boss and talks about it. And his boss says, I'll talk to him. And then David goes to see Spider. And Rooster, Perez, and Perez's partner is watching over what's happening between the Spider and David. So basically what happens is that David pulls a gun on Spider, and the group moves in. And David has prepped himself, so he's made this fake poem, and they kind of confront him about this. And this is this mockery, you try to set me up kind of thing, but I got you, you know, I'm not the one. So it's a very bold move from David, because that makes him more or less look innocent, and the other guys look bad because they're trying to frame their own kind of partner, kind of. And then Perez and David argue and taunt each other, and they're starting to fight and then break it up. And Perez and his partner leaves, and Spider and David and Rooster are left. So Rooster basically stays with David for a beer to calm down. And then Karen speaks to the Russian and shows him a photo. Is this the guy who shot you? So you don't really know who the guy in the photo is, and this is a build-up to the ending, which is happening rather dramatically after this point. So basically what happens is that Rooster kills Spider off while David is in the other room, and then Rooster pulls his gun on David and tells him to sit down, and it tells him to read his book, this little booklet that he had from writing down his thoughts he get from the psychiatrist. So he basically tells him to read it in front of the camera, which he does. So this is kind of the reverse thing where it was Rooster all along doing all these bad things. So that's actually what's been happening from the beginning. Rooster has been killing all these people and trying to frame David, basically. And this is the last evidence he needs, because if he has it on tape, it's proof. So he makes David say all these things in front of the camera, so you have to get as proof. And then David doesn't have a gun or anything, so Rooster just leaves him there. But David goes after him down to the garage area. And then Rooster pulls a gun at him, and then Karen arrives. So basically, David is in the middle. He's between Rooster and Karen. And she can't shoot because David is in the way, and there's this kind of standoff. They move around, and basically Rooster runs away. And David says, like, call for backup or whatever. And he takes the gun from Karen and runs after Rooster. And then what happens is that Rooster kind of hits a dead end. There is this, he tries to shoot off a lock from a door, but he can't really shoot it off because it's an old lock and it's really good. And David catches up to him, and they argue, talk a bit. And then basically what happens is that Rooster's character fires his gun to scare David, and David shoots Rooster, and then calls in the thing, calls him for an ambulance, and talk to him a bit, and basically he calls off the ambulance, letting Rooster kind of bleed out. And then cutting to the interrogation room in the beginning, this kind of like video kind of feed has been narrating the movie all the way, where you thought it was David being the bad guy, but then now at the end of the movie, looking back at it, a bunch of guys and David sitting in a room kind of looking through the video and basically settling the case that Rooster was the killer, not David. And then cutting to David watching a baseball game, and then later you find out he's actually coaching this young girl into a baseball league, basically, and that's where the movie ends. So, can I recommend this movie? Not really. It's one of those thrillers. Maybe it's the genre or something, because I don't really like the build-up. It was kind of like, there's some structure-wise that I don't like, because there's like the structure and the cutting. I don't really got a whole sense of it, because one thing happened and then something else happened in regards to that, and then there's a cut to something that happened before, and then something in the future, and you kind of, I think they kind of hint in the story too, like they basically call David's character Turk at some point. So you kind of realize that they might not actually be talking about David at this point. They might be talking about someone else, but the more and more you go on the story, you realize that something is wrong. And then at the end of like 15 to 10 minutes, they flip everything on you, and you realize, okay, this is the killer. Okay, sure. It makes a little more sense now. But I can't really recommend this movie, because I don't think it really fits everyone. So that's my thoughts on the Righteous Killing. So thanks for watching, and take care.